Hello everyone, welcome to the Lightning Ball channel. If you haven't yet subscribed to my channel, please do so and activate the notification bell. Your support fuels my continued efforts. In our previous episode, Guy had successfully restored Velzard's sanity and learned a shocking truth. The Creator God, Star King Dragon Veldanava, had already revived, and his personality had changed so drastically that he was now highly likely to destroy the world. Guy believed the most urgent task was to modify Velzard's ultimate skill, Lord of Patience, and he placed absolute trust in Rimuru to accomplish this. Rimuru, in turn, performed what others could only describe as a divine miracle, effortlessly reconstructing Velzard's Lord of Patience and Lord of Envy into the far superior ultimate skill, Lord of Divine Ice. In this episode, we will shift to the perspectives of Velzard and Guy, two of the strongest beings in existence, to understand just how unfathomable Rimuru truly was. Under the crushing shadow of Veldanava's impending destruction of the world, Velzard rekindled her hope for victory thanks to Rimuru's miracle. Guy went even further. He openly concluded that Rimuru had already broken the very fundamental world laws created by the Creator God himself. There was no doubt in his mind. Rimuru had stepped into the realm of gods. And as Veldanava rose again, the loyalty of their original allies had started to look questionable. But surprisingly, the true dragons were now proving to be Rimuru's most reliable comrades. So, let's get started. From Velzard's perspective, the moment Rimuru devoured her, she fell into profound shock. It was a gentle, enveloping sensation, a warmth and peace she had never once experienced in her entire life. Yes, her entire life. Not even as a true dragon had Velzard ever known such tranquility. Velzard calmed herself and finally confronted the despair that had locked her heart. She had considered the idea Guy once mentioned, using Lord of Envy to counteract Lord of Patience. But even in the best-case scenario, the two skills could only generate mutual interference, either temporary synergy or partial cancellation, enough to shake off the influence of Lord of Justice. However, the so-called evolution of authority, as Guy described it, was utterly impossible. From Velzard's perspective, Lord of Patience, a gift from her brother Veldanava, was unbreakable. In a sense, it symbolized the perfect law system created by the Creator God. Her own Lord of Envy could never budge that law, no matter how she tried. To fuse them, to evolve them, was, as Velzard believed, a delusion so extreme it could shake the very foundations of the universe. Just then, a mysterious voice echoed in her core. It told her that entrusting everything to her was the wisest choice Velzard could ever make. The tone was haughty, condescending, and unmistakably Seal. Velzard instantly noticed the anomaly. The voice resembled the voice of the world, yet it was definitely something else entirely. After regaining her composure, she deduced it had to be a form of Manas. Even someone as powerful as Guy struggled to infiltrate her heart core. Yet, this very being could do so effortlessly, almost like Twilight Valentine, a digital nature. Velzard cautiously asked if the voice was Rimuru. Seal responded with arrogant dismissal. She said Velzard could guess however she pleased, but she needed to give explicit consent immediately. Oddly, this domineering attitude put Velzard at ease. She took the gamble and agreed. The moment Velzard granted consent, the miracle occurred instantly. Seal activated skill alteration. This was not simple skill fusion, but a violent reconstruction of both soul and authority. A tidal wave of information surged through Velzard's existence, so vast and so fast that even a true dragon could not comprehend it. And in a single instant, it was done. Lord of Patience and Lord of Envy merged into the new ultimate skill, Lord of Divine Ice, Cthulhu. Velzard was stunned to find herself wielding a power on an entirely different dimension. First, zero latency. The new skill obeyed her will with no resistance, no adaptation period, as naturally as breathing. Second, perfect efficiency. Velzard had always been known for her exceptional energy efficiency, but now her consumption was practically zero. Two formerly opposing authorities coexisted flawlessly. Third, overwhelming performance. The power was so immense that Velzard experienced a fleeting illusion that she might even be able to defeat Guy now. She denied the thought instantly, of course, but the fact that it even crossed her mind spoke volumes about just how absurd the enhancement was. As she felt the flow of the new ability, a tidal wave of emotions crashed through her heart. She finally understood why her sister Velgrind spoke of Rimuru with such reverence. This ability, this casual rewriting of divine law, was something even her brother, the Creator God Veldanava, might not be capable of. Velzard couldn't help questioning what Rimuru truly was. He had a body compatible with the true dragon factor, had reached or surpassed the level of a true dragon, and his magicule count utterly dwarfed her own. He could devour everything, even true dragons, yet remain completely unshaken. There was absolutely no way such a being was just a random, magical organism born from the stray magicules Veldora released. It was far too unreasonable, far too impossible. This was the moment when Velzard's mindset completely transformed. Once, in the Star Palace, she had personally witnessed Veldanava's metamorphosis and fallen into a despair so deep that she believed no one could ever defy the Creator God. Following Veldanava's will, she had left the gate of the Star Palace open and brought evil god Ivaraj into the central world. Velzard had already been prepared to give up everything. But now, after witnessing Rimuru's transcendental power with her own eyes, her entire worldview collapsed and rebuilt itself anew. With this new ultimate skill in hand, Velzard felt, for the first time, that perhaps she could challenge Veldanava. A new light rekindled in Velzard's eyes. She now possessed a power capable of opposing a god. If she and Guy joining forces, perhaps a miracle was no longer impossible. And with Rimuru present, the world still had hope. Velzard fully aligned herself with Rimuru and Guy. She was ready to face the final battle. It was far too early to abandon this world at this moment. Back in the real world, the perspective shifted to Guy, who watched Velzard being enveloped in Rimuru's slime. An extremely rare impatience flickered across his face. Even though he had been the one to suggest letting Rimuru perform the skill alteration, now that the moment had come, his heart could not help but feel uneasy. Handing the strongest true dragon over to a slime to meddle with. Was that truly acceptable? But Guy quickly suppressed his doubts, because he had undeniable evidence right before him, namely the powerhouses of Tempest. In his eyes, Rimuru's subordinates, whether Benimaru or Diablo, grew in ways that defied all logic. That was no longer growth, but evolution in the very dimension of their existence. Even Veldora and Velgrind, both true dragons, had their ultimate skills refined to perfection after Rimuru's intervention. And now, the same phenomenon was unfolding in Velzard. Guy could clearly sense the dramatic shift happening within her, not a change in appearance, but a fundamental elevation in essence. As he watched, Guy drifted into deep thought about the structure of power that Veldanava had built. He recalled the ancient battles he once had with the Creator God. Magic had always been bound by limits. A spell could trigger only a single phenomenon, and achieving a complex outcome required tedious sequences, layering countless magical effects. Even a prodigy like Guy had to obey that rule. His strength came from achieving the absolute pinnacle within that system. Skills, however, were entirely different. Veldanava's authorities rewrote the laws of the world directly. Once the underlying rule was established, multiple phenomena could be altered simultaneously without direct manipulation. They were simple, efficient, and overwhelming in effect. Guy himself had pushed his potential to its boundary. He had become the strongest demon lord through his exceptional computational ability, creating the unique skill Pride, and then, through the battle with Velzard, evolving it into the ultimate skill lord of Pride. Yet, even he had limits. He could imitate, reconstruct, and even customize abilities he had witnessed. He could switch between skills so quickly that it appeared as if multiple top-tier abilities were active at once. In truth, however, even he could not simultaneously activate more than one ultimate skill. The system simply would not allow it. But everything Rimuru was doing now shattered those assumptions completely. Rimuru was simultaneously tampering with two ultimate skills and even fusing two inherently opposite authorities, Lord of Patience and Lord of Envy, into an entirely new ultimate skill. What frightened Guy the most was that Rimuru was not merely modifying the authorities Veldanava created, he was improving them. These were powers crafted by the Creator God himself, supposedly perfected. Yet Rimuru had refined them even further, polishing them into something superior. That was a feat even a god might not accomplish. Guy found himself screaming internally, unable to believe such absurdity existed in reality. His worldview trembled on the edge of collapse. Rimuru's actions were nothing short of divine. Just then, the skill alteration concluded. Rimuru shifted from his massive slime form back into human shape, and the membrane surrounding Velzard dissolved. He caught the Frost Dragon as she gently fell from the air. Velzard slowly opened her eyes, not with the mindless frenzy from earlier, but with clarity and reason restored. Guy's time for contemplation ran out. He could not deduce the principles behind Rimuru's method. He could not penetrate the secrets of his power. Everything he understood became meaningless before Rimuru. Since he could not reason it out, there was only one option left. Guy slowly parted his lips, prepared to confront Rimuru directly, switching to Rimuru's perspective at that same moment. As the alteration finished, Rimuru slowly loosened his hands that had been supporting Velzard. The newly awakened Frost Dragon floated calmly in the air, her mind fully restored. Rimuru was just about to breathe a sigh of relief, thinking he had finally survived the ordeal, when he turned his head and met Guy's half-smiling expression. A powerful sense of dread washed over him instantly. Guy's question struck straight at the soul. He demanded to know what Rimuru had just done and how he had done it. Rimuru panicked. This was like cheating on an exam with all the answers provided by Seal, only for the teacher to suddenly call you on stage and ask you to explain the solution. How was he supposed to know the underlying principles? Left with no choice, Rimuru resorted to his universal excuse. He claimed it was a trade secret. Guy immediately rejected that answer, saying such nonsense would never fool him. Rimuru was just about to beg for help when his gaze collided with Velzard, who had just opened her eyes. She was even more ruthless. Her first question went straight to the core. She demanded to know what Rimuru actually was. Rimuru froze completely, scrambling to feign innocence and insisting he was just himself. What else he could be, though? But that tactic clearly no longer worked. Velzard bluntly pointed out that nothing about him looked normal, adding that she had suspected him from the very beginning, in the episode 46, but had held her tongue only because he was a friend of her younger brother, Veldora. At that moment, Guy and Velzard displayed an alarming level of synchronicity. They interrogated Rimuru alternately, like an old married couple working in perfect tandem. Rimuru, speechless, internally complained that Velzard claiming that she was suspicious from the start was pure hindsight nonsense. Just as Rimuru was about to be verbally crushed, Diablo stepped forward. Normally, Rimuru found Diablo dramatic and exhausting. But at that moment, Diablo's declaration that Guy and Velzard were being disgracefully disrespectful toward Rimuru-sama sounded like heavenly music. But things immediately spun out of control. To defend his master, Diablo actually dared to challenge both Guy and Velzard at once. Seeing three of the world's top-tier beings on the verge of fighting right in front of him, Rimuru felt a throbbing headache. These three troublemakers really had no sense of time or place. The world was on the edge of being destroyed. Was this seriously the moment for internal conflict? At this point, only the sole mature adult in the scene, Rimuru, could salvage the situation. He forcibly cut off their arguments, declaring that this was no time for infighting. The battlefield in Damargania still needed their support, and the immediate priority was dealing with Ivaraj. Rimuru aggressively shifted the conversation toward the real enemy. His motivation, however, was neither noble nor heroic. He simply wanted one modest, honest dream. Once Ivaraj was taken care of, he could go home and finally enjoy a peaceful, easy life. If he cleaned up this mess, his long-awaited slow life would finally be within reach. Rimuru originally intended to activate the Eye of God, Argos, to peek at the situation near the Heaven Tower, hoping to find an excuse to slip away and help, mostly to flee from Guy and Velzard's interrogation. But just as he was about to act, both of them shot him simultaneous death glares that froze him on the spot. Guy easily saw through him, telling Rimuru not to panic and insisting they first arrange assignments for the upcoming war. Rimuru was internally collapsing, but Guy's reasoning was annoyingly sound. Velzard was even more direct. She stated flatly that Ivaraj was not the greatest threat. Her brother Veldanava had already revived, and the terror of the Creator God needed no explanation. The current Veldanava was nothing like the gentle brother she once knew. He felt distant, unapproachable, and frightening. His goal, as Velzard estimated, might be to destroy the existing world entirely and create a new one from scratch. Rimuru felt a massive headache forming. His impression of Veldanava amounted to something like Milim's dad, and that guy who used to be really strong, so he had no real sense of what that meant. But when even Velzard, the mightiest true dragon, said she did not wish to stand against him, and when even the usually arrogant Diablo grew solemn, Rimuru finally realized how serious the situation was. Fortunately, Guy stepped forward and took the most dangerous responsibility upon himself. He declared that he would face Veldanava head-on and settle things properly. But right after that came another problem. Now that Veldanava had been confirmed as the enemy, the biggest question emerged: who would stand on his side? After all, he was the Creator God. Rimuru and Guy had no choice but to begin a brutal evaluation of potential allies and loyalty. First were the obvious enemies, Feldway. There was no debate. Feldway was a die-hard Veldanava loyalist, and would follow him to the bitter end. Hearing Feldway's name, Diablo let out his signature laugh, declaring that Feldway was no longer his match. Next came the uncertain group, the ones whose loyalties no one could predict. This naturally referred to the remaining members of the Seven Angels of Origin. When facing their former master, their intentions were unreadable. Pico and Gracia would unquestionably follow Dino, but Dino himself was the biggest variable. Unreliable, carefree, the ultimate slacker. Even though everyone got along with him, Rimuru had no choice but to put him on the pending list. Rimuru couldn't read Zalario at all. Obera had sworn loyalty to Milim, but the enemy was Veldanava, her creator. These five simply could not be fully trusted. Guy stated Dino would probably be fine, but if they truly became enemies, he would show no mercy. Next were the relatively reliable ones. First was Luminous. She wasn't created directly by Veldanava, and she loved beauties and music, cherished the world, and would very likely stand with Rimuru. Then there was the straightforward Midlim. Although she was Veldanava's daughter, she had openly said that she didn't even know her father. Rimuru trusted Milim's simple and direct nature. Leon possessed free will, and with Chloe in the equation, he should also be trustworthy. And then came the absolutely reliable group, surprisingly, the true dragons. Velzard stated that as long as a true dragon had someone they wished to protect, they would oppose even the world itself without hesitation. Guy and Velzard were prepared to oppose God out of love for each other. Thinking of Velgrind and her devotion to Rudra, Velzard's words were clearly true. Guy also added that if Rudra were still alive, he would never accept this version of Veldanava. Veldora being bound heart and soul to Rimuru was of course beyond question. At that moment, Seal added a cold remark in Rimuru's mind. If anything went wrong, he only needed to activate Velgrind's true dragon release, and her power would return immediately. There was absolutely no possibility of betrayal. Rimuru kept a straight face, pretending he already knew this, but inside he was stunned. He hadn't expected such authority. After all the discussion, even though many uncertainties remained, Rimuru decided to stop overthinking. As Guy said, they would simply improvise. Then Diablo stepped forward with perfect timing and delivered a declaration of loyalty, swearing he would never betray Rimuru-sama, and would eliminate all enemies. He was always over the top. But in this moment filled with the possibility of betrayal, his absolute devotion brought Rimuru genuine comfort. Right then, Velzard, still monitoring the battlefield with the eye of God, announced a change in the situation. Thanks to Milim's arrival, the human army seemed to be regaining the advantage, but the situation was still dangerously volatile. Even though their discussion had taken place under accelerated thought, they could delay no further. Carrying the belief of saving the world for now in order to slack off comfortably later, Rimuru gathered Guy, Velzard, and Diablo and activated mass teleportation toward the Heaven Tower. Alright, that's all for this video. As we've mentioned many times before, true dragons in TenSura are not merely the strongest beings, they represent natural phenomena themselves. Velzard embodies deceleration, entropy reduction, absolute zero. Velgrind embodies acceleration, entropy increase, scorching heat. Veldora embodies chaos. When Rimuru evolved into a true dragon, an ultimate slime, he had already altered the fundamental laws of this world. In the past, we wondered whether Rimuru had inherited certain aspects of Veldanava's power. Well, that might still be correct, but the real direction turned out to be far more straightforward. Rimuru's evolution was a direct challenge to Veldanava's authority. And now, Veldanava's three younger siblings, Velzard, Velgrind, Veldora, along with his daughter Milim, all stood behind Rimuru. Rimuru was, in truth, the new god. Volume 23's core was always the clash between Rimuru and Veldanava. As for Ivaraj, that was merely overtime in my opinion. In our next episode, we would temporarily shift perspective away from Rimuru to examine the fierce battle at the Heaven Tower. As you could already tell from this episode, a large portion of the upcoming chapters would not feature Rimuru, Guy, Diablo, or Velzard. Of course, as TenSura readers, we don't need Rimuru-sama in every episode. The next episode would be just as exciting. If you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, and subscribe. Your support was greatly appreciated. See you in the next one.